Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new installment of Racist to Watch. I'm A'shanti Gholar, the president of Emerge, the only organization dedicated to recruiting and training Democratic women and providing them a powerful network. In this new installment, we are going to be talking to some of the women who make up the Emerge network that are going to be on the ballot November 3rd. This is our first interview, and I am so excited to talk to one of our phenomenal alums when we talk about young Black, Brown, Indigenous women just changing the face of politics. We're talking about women like Dora Drake, who is running for the Wisconsin State Assembly. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dora. She is 27 years old and is deeply connected to Milwaukee and her community. She has been working to support Wisconsin families since she graduated from Marquette University. She is currently the Member Service Coordinator at the Center for Self-Sufficiency, where she assists individuals who are re-entering into society to obtain the necessary resources to achieve their goals. When we asked Dora why she's running, she says so she can build bridges and work with others and get the job done. We hear that from Emerge women all the time, why they're running. Dora is dedicated to serving the community and uniting everyone and hope to rebuild and strengthen communities for the future. She represents the future of politics in this country. I'm so excited to call her an Emerge sister and to have her kick off our series today. Dora, welcome. Give us a brief introduction before we dive into the questions.
Absolutely. The introduction was great. Thank you so much. But to everyone joining, thank you for joining us. Like Ashanti mentioned, I am running for State Assembly in District 11. And the reason why I'm running is I was actually born and raised in the district. And I still live in the district as well as my family. And being a new aunt now to a nephew, I realized, one, whatever happens is going to affect him directly. So that was first and foremost. Second, as Ashanti alluded to, I've been a social worker in the criminal justice system for several years now. And I've touched and seen everything from IOTA services to mental health to seeking employment, housing, healthcare, access, you name it. And with those experiences and even having the opportunity to being a campaign manager for an MPS school board last year really was my introduction to the politics deep within. But over time, I started to see things differently after that campaign and after the April 7th election here in Milwaukee and just, the state of Wisconsin. What I saw with voter suppression was such on a level where I was tired of hearing people say, there's no point in getting involved. I don't see anything happening for me, and people are losing hope. And now, especially with the pandemic, to a heightened sense of racial injustice in this country and this nation, I believe is so vital that all of us stay grounded, united in something. And for me, that's hope. We need to stay united in hope so we can still work together, go across the aisle, but still speak truth to power and create what we want in this new normal that we're all living through currently, and creating solutions that are effective and tangible for people in their day-to-day lives. And it's an honor that I'm running. I'm so grateful that I won the primary election recently, and I hope to win on November 3rd. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And what you said about your nephew, that really touched me because I tell people when I think about the future and when I'm voting, I'm really voting for my nieces and my nephews,
right,
so that they can do as well as TT Shawnee. I'm the one in my family who's doing well, and I want them to have that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the fact that, as I like to say, we are in the middle of two pandemics, a health pandemic and a racial injustice pandemic. And we've seen that play out in Wisconsin. We knew that y'all didn't even know until election eve that you were still going to have an election and do in-person voting. But we still did see so many people turn out. Mm-hmm. And I feel that was a testament that they knew what was on the ballot. And really, our futures were on the ballot. And there were 59 Emerge Wisconsin alums on the ballot that day. Mm-hmm. 52 of them around won their races. You were one of them. Mm-hmm. So pivoting your campaign during the time with all of the unknown, what has it been like since then for the Wisconsin families, Wisconsin communities? What are some of the things that you think need to be immediately worked on when you win your race?
Absolutely. So I think the top two that come to mind is obviously health. So because of campaigning in a pandemic, we had to obviously use different tactics in terms of reaching out to voters. But in that, at least here in District 11, in order to get your vote, they need to see who I am. So I had to mask up, wore gloves, kept my distance, and people were glad that I did. But what I heard on the doors and in my neighborhoods in this district was one about healthcare. People had mixed feelings about the mask mandate, but knowing that, it's important that everyone's health is taken care of. And so deep down, it really was frustration about what this looks like for everyone. Another thing was jobs. A lot of people lost their jobs. Some people were furloughed. Some people still had to work day in and day out because there are essential workers that had to deal with this head on when everything was still at the peak. And even then, that can be questioned, debated currently as we're moving forward. And I think last but not least, it was also about what was going to happen to, schools and the business owners. And so with schools, families and parents, especially one specifically, this person was actually a teacher, but also a mom. So she was telling me how she would like to teach her kids a certain way because she knows what works, but she now has to teach a different set of kids while her own kids are being taught in a different way. So the stress of that is something that people they understand, but it's frustrating. And with business owners and minority-owned businesses, I believe it's important that they are supported still in this time because they also are anchors, in our communities. And even though there was a economic injury disaster loan assistance program that went out, a lot of our local minority-owned businesses didn't even get that financial relief because for somehow reason there was a tweak where they just didn't get it and larger businesses got that support. So moving forward, it really is going to be talking about what quality public education looks like and making sure that access to technology, whether it's Wi-Fi, hotspots, laptops, is going to be part of the discussion, as well as what support looks like for teachers and families, making sure that business owners are supported. But for those two that are coming out of the system when it comes to reentry work and criminal justice reform overall, I know before things were shut down, personally, I had members that said, I'm stuck in this transitional living placement and I can't leave. And one of my roommates may be positive for COVID. So I may not be able to leave or go to work. And they're just trying to now get back on their own 2 feet, but they have to go get an ID and a driver's license, and the DMV centers are closed. And so moving forward, I think the top issues are going to be addressing healthcare, what quality healthcare looks like, not only for everyone, but especially communities of color, making sure COVID testing sites are free for those that need it, as well as expansion of Medicare and Medicaid. In addition to that, making sure that there's increased funding for public schools and quality education, as well as, again, addressing criminal justice reform. So that's addressing the police brutality. It would be wrong if we didn't address what happened due to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and currently in Kenosha, Jacob Blake. And so to ignore that would only incite greater frustration. That's not what I ran for in the first place. I ran so people can be hopeful that things can change.
So powerful. And I want to hone in on the criminal justice reform aspect. We know that in Kentucky, they just settled with Breonna Taylor's family for $12 million. We're hearing that's the biggest settlement ever paid out, for the undue killing of a Black woman. But when we hear about those settlements, I always tell people, okay, all of you who are saying that you don't care about criminal justice reform, this doesn't matter to me, that settlement is being paid with your tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually really should care about police brutality.
Right.
And when it comes to the criminal justice system, we say at Emerge that you can't change the criminal justice system without changing the faces of criminal justice reform.
Absolutely.
And we know that that is those women in law enforcement positions that we like to focus on, having more sheriffs and judges and DAs, prosecutors, so important. But people don't realize there's other elected positions that also play a role in criminal justice reform. So
Right.
tell us a little bit more about how the state assembly actually impacts the criminal justice system, and a little bit more about some of the things that you would like to work on when you're elected.
Yeah, absolutely. So since the state assembly position really does create task force or push and create legislation that's addressed statewide, we have the opportunity to change different statutes that address what constitutes as okay, for example, what is just or not, if that makes sense. So when it comes to criminal justice reform, we have the power to either invest, funding or defund. And so there is the conversation about defunding the police. And there's a misconception, I believe, around that, just because some people think, oh, you just don't want police officers. Well, no, it's because they do great work and it is a stressful job and there are great officers. But what's happening is the ones that aren't being held accountable is now pulling, quote unquote, the whole bag. And it's obviously a fatal one, and this is something that we know for years, but this is just now heightened because of what's happening. And so when I tell people, it's just allocating some of those funds that they receive into other services. So making sure that we support more in our social services that can deal with someone that maybe is having a mental health episode or someone that needs access to IOTA treatment. Getting to the root cause of what's happening is part of that, is because police respond when there's already an issue. So what we can do is invest in areas so that way we prevent situations from happening in the first place. And so that's something that I'd be pushing. But here, at least definitely in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, it's unfortunate that we're known that we have the highest incarceration of Black men. And a conversation that happened was trying to release individuals with low offense or no violent record because of the COVID cases that were stacking up in the prison buildings and facilities themselves. And so part of that is looking at revocation, is looking at how we can support individuals that are trying to make a positive change in the reentry services and so much more. So it's a very large task because there's so many moving parts, but it's essential that we start looking at what that looks like, and also addressing the school to prison pipeline. That has to start because that's where really, I believe, starts, especially if we're already channeling our Black, our brown, our poor students and our kids into the justice system. Clearly, we've done something wrong, and it's important that we invest in ways that they can be successful and fruitful in what the gifts and talents that they do have.
And I think that's a great segue into my next question. You really talked about how COVID has impacted Milwaukee and the state. What are some of the other educational and health issues that you would like to focus on? Because we know one of the reasons why the Black community in particular was more susceptible to COVID is because of our quality of life and how we're treated when we go in to get health care. I think I know every single Black woman I talk to has that story of when they were ignored or told the pain will go away for a variety of reasons. I think we could have an entire conversation about that. But what are some of the other things that you would work on?
When it comes to healthcare, I know I mentioned that there needs to be expansion of quality care. But in that, it's also finding ways to push, I think, because we have plenty of healthcare clinics, and actually in Milwaukee, it's just there are some that get more funding than others. And I had the opportunity to listen to a presentation a couple of weeks ago of a health professional telling us that these are the options that are in the city. It's just they're not getting the funding they could to be great. And so and they tend to serve, Black, brown, poor communities. And so part of that is making sure that we either reinforce policies and laws that are actually already intact and creating ones that encourage that. And I think in addition to just quality of life, and especially mentioned education, it's going to be ASB wraparound. So making sure, like I mentioned, people have access to technology, whether that's laptops, that's Wi-Fi, that's mobile spots, things of that nature, but also supporting teachers as well, because it's a hard task. And I think, I believe we take them to granted too often. And it's unfortunate because they do so much for our kids. And so finding ways what it looks like to support our teachers now, I can tell you firsthand, facilitating a group just with young adults. So that's like 22 to 25, 30 over Zoom for 4 hours is difficult. I don't even want to be on screen for 4 hours. So to have kids in front of a screen for that long, just imagine how much more difficult that may be. And I believe it's an opportunity now where we can sort of recreate what public education even looks like. And maybe it doesn't have to be what it is currently in terms of how rigid it can be. But last but not least, I think is access to wealth. And that means making sure that we invest in individuals when it comes to housing, infrastructure, and transportation, to jobs. I know firsthand, well, not firsthand, but in Milwaukee, I believe the home ownership rate for Black individuals is 7.5%. And that's just staggering, and it shouldn't be that way. So part of this is multifaceted, right? So we want to make sure we have great education access for them. We want to make sure that our families have not only fair jobs, but paid what they're worth to actually live off of that, as well as, looking at how we can address the health disparities that individuals face, and making sure that we are creating avenues for communities to generate generational wealth, not only for themselves, but moving forward into generations to come.
Oh, I love it, especially when you talk about reimagining. We just really have that opportunity. And I apologize to everyone because it is allergy season. And of course, right when I do this interview is when my allergies want to kick in. But I want to move over to our next question. I say all the time that some of the best elected officials started off as organizers and activists. So tell us a little bit about how you got your start and that moment when you said, all right, it's time for me to put my name on the ballot.
Absolutely. So it's something that I actually didn't even see coming, first and foremost. So my time at Marquette, I was learning more about, I majored in social welfare and justice. And in that time was really when Black Lives Matter movement was kicking off. And that was sort of the start, I guess you can say, about me getting involved, participating in demonstrations, organizing with other students about how to make the experience of Black students and students of color better. And that transitioned into social work. But outside of being a social worker, I would find ways where I can volunteer in the community. And that led me to be involved with what happened with the Sherman unrest that happened several years ago here in Milwaukee. And that was life-changing because it forced me to change and understand my perspective, how people see things differently. But it deepened my understanding of not only social justice, but law. And that's something I actually was looking into. So I'm thinking law school. Didn't happen the way I wanted it to, but it opened a door for me to be a campaign manager for a school board race for Shyla Deacon, who is actually another Emerge alum that I had the pleasure of working with. And that really, I think, in a sense, got me started in terms of understanding like how politics works, and not only Milwaukee, but just in general. And for a second, I didn't want to because I was so frustrated with what I saw after that, and I couldn't unsee it. And it wasn't until the April 7th election where I took my brother to go vote because I already early voted. I knew it was an important election. And to see the line for like 2-3 blocks at 7:00 in the morning, those pictures I took actually went viral. I had the opportunity to do an interview with Essence magazine due to one of our agencies here, Leaders Igniting Transformation. And that was really what did it. I was like, you know what? I know I have something I can offer to the table, whether it was my work as a social worker, to volunteer in the community, and just being so tired of people not having hope. I was like, I want to be part of the solution, and I hope and I have the opportunity to do that.
I love it. And you're part of the Emerge family. You mentioned you ran the campaign for an Emerge sister. What made you say that you wanted to do the Emerge program, and how has Emerge helped you on this journey?
Mm-hmm. So it really was knowing the value that we as women bring to the table. I think so often we sell ourselves short. And quite honestly, like that happened to me. Someone's like, you should run for office. I'm like, you know what? Nah, I don't think so. Just because I knew what it took. But we doubt ourselves so often, thinking that we're not good enough. We don't have the qualifications. Someone else will do it. I have other things I have to worry about. And I think that we not only are we showing ourselves, but we're short selling the people that we can impact. And so Emerge was an organization that I realized was that, gave info, insight to what it means to run for office, not only as a candidate, but for me personally too. I had the opportunity and I have a great opportunity of now having a great network of women that I go to for support, for questions, and quite honestly, to hold me accountable. That's one thing that it's lost personally in my perspective when it comes to politics. And getting into this, I told myself that I don't want to lose who I am doing this. And I want people to make sure I am better. So if I am wrong, please call me out on it. So in that way, I can be better. So we could all be better, because I know my actions will have a direct impact on this district and people's lives. And that's something I don't take lightly. So because of that, I'm grateful for Emerge, just because of all the skills that I've learned, as well as the network of great women and leaders that are currently leading. And one of our Emerge sisters in my class is the main organizer for the Jacob Blake family. So we are out here doing amazing work, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
I just love this network so much. So Dora, thank you for joining us today, for talking about your race, sharing your journey. Give everyone your website, your social media, so they can check you out.
Absolutely. So we are hot on Facebook and Instagram, and we're just now getting started on Twitter. But for our website, it's Dora Drake, FORWI.com, as well as on Facebook, it's Dora Drake for Wisconsin Assembly. And it's the same thing for Instagram, IG at Dora Drake for WI. So if you can't remember either one, just remember the cartoon, Dora the Explorer or Drake the Rapper. And if you Google my name, I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
I love it.
So I figured it'd be a great way.
I love it so much. Dora, thank you for being you. Thank you for running. And I just can't wait to celebrate your win on November 3rd. We need more women like you in office.
Thank you.
So thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you were joining us late, I'm A'shanti Gholar, the president of Emerge, speaking with Emerge Wisconsin alum Dora Drake, who is running for Wisconsin State Assembly. We're going to be hosting these conversations weekly, featuring more amazing women from this network, and I hope that you will join us for those as well. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Have a good one, everyone.